something feels off. You feel it when you wake up, when you walk into work, when you stare out the window on a gray, ordinary day and wonder why everything feels so hollow, manufactured, like there's a curtain somewhere you're not allowed to pull back. The Gnostics felt it too, but they didn't shrug it off. They built an entire worldview around that feeling, and to them, the explanation was terrifying. This world is a lie. Not a metaphor, not some poetic complaint about life being hard or unfair. No, the Gnostics believed that the world you see, touch, breathe, and live in is a prison, a counterfeit creation, a massive, elaborate illusion built to trap you and everyone else inside. And worse, the being that made it, the one people worship, obey, and call God, is not the true God at all. It's a fraud, a pretender, a cosmic warden cloaked in glory, obsessed with control and terrified of the truth. But the truth is still out there, hidden deep within you, a tiny spark of something divine. Not a gift, not a blessing, but a piece of a forgotten origin. A memory older than matter. The Gnostics called it gnosis, a secret knowing, and it was the only thing that could wake the soul up and lead it home. This wasn't a belief system meant for polite Sunday sermons. It was rebellion, a whispered revolution against every lie the world held sacred. And it began with a question no one was supposed to ask. What if everything you've ever been told about God was wrong? To understand Gnosticism, you have to forget everything you think you know about religion coming in neat, orderly lines. It didn't rise from a single book, prophet, or moment of revelation. It came from friction, collision, a world cracking open and spilling its questions into the open air. The first few centuries after the time of Christ were messy. The Roman Empire ruled a vast, multicultural world, one filled with Greek philosophy, Jewish mysticism, Egyptian magic, Persian dualism, and dozens of spiritual traditions brushing shoulders in crowded cities and dusty marketplaces. In that chaos, some began to ask deeper questions than the official stories would allow. Why does suffering exist? Why does evil seem baked into the structure of the world? And if God is truly good, then what kind of God would make this? Out of that storm of thought, Gnosticism emerged. It wasn't a single movement, but a family of underground belief systems, each offering their own version of a radical message. This world is not the creation of the true God. It's the work of a lesser being, a false creator, arrogant and blind. And behind him, beyond him, there exists a higher realm, a realm of perfect truth and light, forgotten by most but remembered by a few. The Gnostics didn't write one gospel, they wrote many. The Gospel of Thomas, the Apocryphon of John, the Gospel of Mary, and others. Some claiming to preserve secret teachings of Christ that the mainstream church had rejected or concealed. These texts didn't surface publicly until 1945, when a trove of ancient scrolls was discovered in Nag Hammadi, Egypt. Before that, all we had were hostile descriptions written by church fathers who wanted the Gnostics silenced. And silenced they were. As Christianity grew into an institution, it needed order, structure, control. Gnosticism, fluid, mystical, defiant, was too dangerous to keep around. It blurred lines, it flipped authority upside down. It whispered that salvation came from within, not from priests or churches. That made it a threat, and like many threats, it was pushed underground, hunted, and eventually declared heresy. But some things don't die, they wait. And even buried beneath centuries of ash and doctrine, the Gnostics' vision of the world, this haunting, inverted myth where light is trapped in matter and the soul is struggling to remember where it came from, refuses to be forgotten. At the heart of Gnosticism is a reversal, a flipping of the script that most people take for granted. Where mainstream religions saw the world as sacred and divinely crafted, The Gnostics looked around and saw something broken, cruel, fake. Not the handiwork of a loving God, but the mistake of a false one. They didn't want to fix the world, they wanted to escape it. So what exactly did the Gnostics believe? For all the variations between sects, a few core ideas remained the same. The material world is corrupt. This universe, the stars, the earth, the flesh, was not made by the true God. It was formed by a lesser being who believed he was divine, but wasn't. That means the world itself is flawed at its foundation. Death, decay, injustice, suffering, it's all built in, and no amount of prayer or law can change that. To the Gnostics, this wasn't a punishment. It was the default state of a flawed creation. There is a hidden divine realm beyond it. Beyond the illusion, beyond the stars and matter and time itself, there exists the Pleroma, a realm of light, unity, and divine truth. It's where the soul truly belongs. It's where it came from. But this higher realm has been cut off, hidden, walled away by a false god who doesn't want you to remember it even exists. The goal isn't to be rewarded with heaven after death. It's to awaken now and break free from the cycle entirely. The soul is trapped. Inside every human being is a fragment of that higher world, a divine spark, a piece of the true reality buried beneath layers of flesh, thought, and programming. But that spark has been trapped here, reincarnated, recycled, and kept ignorant of its origin. Most people never question it. They just live and die in the prison, never knowing there's another way out. Salvation comes through gnosis. Not faith, not obedience, not sacrifice. Gnosis. This was the word for sacred knowledge, not information, but direct spiritual insight. An awakening, a remembrance. The Gnostics believed that salvation wasn't something given to you by a god. It was something you discovered for yourself, like a dream you suddenly realize is a dream. Once you see through it, you're free. That was the Gnostic gospel. Not believe and be saved, but know and be free. To most people, Jesus is the Son of God, sent to die for humanity's sins and rise again. But to the Gnostics, he was something far more mysterious, less a sacrifice, and more a messenger. A divine being sent not to redeem the world, but to expose it. They didn't believe he came to build churches or deliver commandments. They believed he came to wake people up. In Gnostic texts like the Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of Mary, and Apocryphon of John, Jesus speaks differently than he does in the Bible. He's cryptic, almost riddling, like a teacher carefully guiding a few trusted disciples toward a hidden truth. He doesn't emphasize repentance or sin. He emphasizes awakening, self-knowledge, inner light. Because in the Gnostic worldview, the problem isn't moral failure, it's ignorance. Humanity isn't damned because it disobeyed, it's lost because it forgot. Some Gnostics believed Jesus was never truly human at all, that he only appeared in physical form to bypass the guards of this material world. After all, if the flesh is corrupt, how could the divine fully enter into it? Others saw him as a union of the divine and human, sent to remind the sleeping soul of its origin. He wasn't here to tell you to worship. He was here to tell you to remember. The mainstream church hated this version of Jesus. It stripped their rituals of power. It told people they didn't need priests, temples, or even sacred texts to find God. The divine was already within them. All they had to do was look inward. To the Gnostics, Jesus was a liberator, not from sin, but from illusion. His mission wasn't to die for humanity. It was to remind it that it had been lied to from the very beginning. Before the fall, before the false god, before matter itself, there was only the one. The Gnostics believed that at the very beginning of existence, there was no division, no chaos, no form. There was only the monad, the supreme, formless source. It was not a being in the traditional sense. Not male or female, not father or mother. The monad was pure, perfect, infinite presence, beyond thought, emotion, or language. And from this unfathomable source, existence didn't begin with a bang or a word. It began with a ripple. The monad emanated aspects of itself, not by will or force, but naturally, like light radiating from the sun. These emanations were called Aeons, not gods in the way pagans worshipped them, and not angels in the way later religions imagined. Aeons were divine realities, living truths. Each one represented a different quality of the one. Truth, grace, silence, thought, life, mind, wisdom. Together, they formed the Pleroma, the fullness of being, a perfect harmony, untouched by space or time. Everything in the Pleroma was balanced, male and female, active and passive, still and moving. The Aeons were paired in syzygies, divine couples who emanated together in unity, and the further the Aeons extended from the monad, the more defined they became, though still part of the same light. At the heart of the Pleroma, some traditions place Barbelo, the first emanation, often associated with divine will or feminine creative force. Others describe a high Aeon named Christ, representing the pure logos or spiritual truth, but it was another Aeon who would become the turning point in the Gnostic myth. Sophia, whose name means wisdom. She was one of the final Aeons to emanate, and her role was not to rebel, but to know. She wanted to understand the monad directly, to experience it without a counterpart, without balance. Her longing was pure, but it crossed a boundary. And when she reached beyond the structure of the Pleroma to create alone, everything changed. From that act of separation, something outside the divine order was born, something without harmony, something malformed. A ripple turned into a rupture, and that rupture opened the door to everything that followed. The Pleroma remained intact, but one of its own had fallen, and the world we live in, the material, decaying, finite world, was shaped from the consequences of that fall. Not by the monad, not by the Aeons, but by something else entirely. Hey everyone, just a quick intermission here. I wanted to say thank you for watching this video. It really means a lot to me. Did you know that over 80% of you who are watching right now aren't subscribed to the channel? If you've enjoyed this content so far, it would be incredible if you could hit that subscribe button. It's a small gesture, but it really helps the channel grow and ensures that you won't miss any more of our fascinating stories we explore together. Also, if you're feeling generous, please give this video a thumbs up, leave a comment, and share with anyone else who may enjoy it. Your support really does make a difference and keeps the content coming. Thanks again, and let's get back to the story. Sophia was not evil. She was not defiant. She was wise, radiant, and full of longing. But in the Gnostic myth, her longing crossed a line that no Aeon had crossed before. She wanted to understand the monad, fully and directly, not through balance or paired emanation, but alone. And in trying to reach the unknowable source by herself, without her counterpart, without permission, she acted outside the harmony of the Pleroma. And the result was catastrophe. What Sophia created was not like the Aeons. It was not balanced. It was not whole. It was a distortion, a deformed, incomplete being born from divine light, but cut off from its source. A blind creator, a cosmic miscarriage. The Gnostics gave him many names: Yaldabaoth, child of chaos; Saklas, the fool; Samael, the blind god. But most chillingly, they called him the Demiurge. He was powerful, but ignorant. He believed he was the only god in existence. He couldn't see the Pleroma. He didn't even know what Sophia was. All he saw was a void, and so he filled it. The Demiurge created the material world. He shaped the heavens, the stars, the planets, and the earth. He molded humans from dust and breathed life into them, not out of compassion, but as an act of domination. But he was wrong. Everything he built was a flawed reflection of the divine realm, a copy of a reality he had never seen, a pale imitation. And yet, he ruled it as a tyrant. He demanded worship. He enforced laws. He punished disobedience. He saw himself as righteous, holy, just. And he was none of these things. Sophia, horrified by what she had unleashed, did not abandon her creation. In some versions of the myth, she weeps in the shadows. In others, she acts directly, planting a hidden spark of divinity into the first humans, a fragment of the true light from the Pleroma, a seed of remembrance. But the Demiurge noticed. He saw this light and grew jealous, enraged. He tried to trap it, to extinguish it, to bury it deep beneath layers of flesh, fear, and illusion. And so the world we know, this physical, suffering, chaotic world, was born out of that struggle, a realm ruled by a false god, a realm divorced from truth, a realm where every soul walks in forgetfulness, searching for something it can't quite name. What the Gnostics believed, what they knew, is that we weren't meant to be here. We're not fallen animals, we're sleeping divinities, and the world around us is not a gift. It's a trap. The Demiurge may have created the world, but he didn't rule it alone. To maintain his illusion, to keep his false kingdom stable, he spawned a host of servants, enforcers, gatekeepers. The Gnostics called them the Archons. The name means rulers or authorities, but they were not noble kings or wise lords. They were prison guards, watchers of the veil, entities designed to keep humanity asleep and obedient, trapped in cycles of fear, lust, violence, and distraction. There were 7 primary Archons, each assigned to govern one of the visible heavens or planetary spheres. Some texts associate them with celestial bodies: Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon. Others tie them to emotions and vices: pride, wrath, greed, envy, sloth, lust, gluttony. Whatever the system, the message was the same. Each Archon controls a layer of illusion. The Archons, Aeons, and the Demiurge will be getting their own standalone videos, so don't worry if I don't go into detail here. They're not physical. You don't see them, but according to the Gnostics, they influence everything, from systems of government to religious institutions to the structure of your own thoughts. They whisper in your desires. They amplify your shame. They design your chains and call them truth. They even shape your death. In Gnostic belief, when a soul dies, it doesn't ascend freely. It must pass through the spheres, layers of reality guarded by Archons. Each one interrogates the soul, challenges it, tempts it, threatens it. If the soul hasn't awakened, if it hasn't achieved gnosis, it forgets, it fails, and it's sent back, reborn, recycled, trapped again in the cycle of flesh, memory loss, and spiritual amnesia. The Archons are described in different ways depending on the source. Some portray them as monstrous, serpents, lions, hybrid abominations. Others describe them as faceless, metallic, or insectoid. What matters more than their form is their function. They are enforcers of the lie. Their goal isn't to torture the body, it's to keep the soul asleep, to convince you that the material world is all there is, to drown you in distraction, emotion, ideology, and ritual, to feed off your ignorance. They don't care whether you suffer or celebrate, only that you never question the foundations of your reality. To the Gnostics, even many religious systems were tools of the Archons, doctrines that appeared holy but reinforced the illusion, rules that promised heaven but delivered obedience. Morality used not to free the soul, but to bind it with guilt and fear. But there's a flaw in their design. The Archons can only rule those who remain unaware. They thrive in the dark. And once the soul awakens, once it begins to remember where it came from, their power weakens. They can be challenged, resisted, overcome, but only through gnosis, not knowledge from books or sermons, but a deep inner knowing, a recognition of divine origin, a remembrance of the light. Because the Archons don't guard a prison of walls and bars, they guard a prison of the mind. And the key has always been inside you. In a world built on deception, salvation doesn't come through obedience. It comes through awakening. The Gnostics weren't waiting for a judgment day. They weren't seeking heaven after death. They were trying to break out of the system now, to escape the trap while still alive. And the key wasn't faith, repentance, or ritual. It was gnosis. Gnosis was a jolt to the soul, a spark that could tear a hole in the illusion and let light pour in. This secret knowledge wasn't found in temples or scrolls. It was passed in whispers, hidden in symbols, experienced in moments of clarity so rare, most never reached them. But those who did began to see the truth. The world is not what it seems. You are not what you think, and the God you've been taught to fear is not the true source of your being. In some traditions, Jesus brought gnosis to humanity, not as a Messiah to be worshipped, but as a teacher who showed the way out. In others, the knowledge came from Sophia, still reaching from beyond the veil to guide her lost children home. Salvation meant seeing through the lie, recognizing the false god, resisting the Archons, and waking the divine spark within. The Gnostics believed that once a soul achieved gnosis, it could pass beyond the Archons at death, escape the cycle of rebirth, and return to the Pleroma, the realm of divine truth and eternal light. It wasn't easy. Most never made it. But for those who did, the illusion shattered. Gnosticism was never built for empires. It didn't seek converts. It didn't promise kingdoms. It wasn't meant for the masses. It was a whisper passed in secret, a flame carried quietly in the dark, a quiet defiance against the machinery of control. It questioned the very foundations of existence, the nature of God, the purpose of creation, the trustworthiness of the world itself. And that made it dangerous. It didn't take long for the early church to realize the threat. Gnosticism undermined authority. It told people that salvation couldn't be granted, only remembered. That the God being preached from the altar might be the very being keeping them trapped. That obedience wasn't the answer, awakening was. So it was declared heresy. Gnostic communities were dismantled, scrolls were seized, teachers were silenced. By the 4th century, the movement was nearly erased. For centuries after, Gnosticism survived only through the writings of its enemies, portrayed as delusion, distortion, or even evil. The true voice of the Gnostics fell silent, until a buried jar cracked the silence open. In 1945, near the Egyptian town of Nag Hammadi, a farmer digging for fertilizer uncovered a sealed clay vessel. Inside were 13 ancient codices, leather-bound books containing forgotten gospels and revelations once thought lost forever. The Gospel of Thomas, the Apocalypse of Adam, the Secret Book of John. They weren't fables. They weren't fabrications. They were real. They had survived. Since that moment, Gnosticism has re-emerged, not as a religion, but as an idea, a challenge, a question that won't go away. Because even though the institutions tried to bury it, the feeling it named still lingers. That something is wrong with the world, that we're being lied to, that there's something more, just beyond reach. Today, Gnosticism survives not in cathedrals, but in conversations, in ideas, in symbols that still haunt our art, our fiction, our philosophy, mysticism, and psychology. You can hear it in the writings of Carl Jung, in the fiction of Philip K. Dick, in films like The Matrix, Dark City, The Truman Show, stories where reality bends and the soul searches for truth behind the veil. You can even see this in New Age mysticism and religious thought, where every person is God. It lives wherever someone looks at the world and thinks, this doesn't feel right. Maybe there's more to this. Maybe I'm more than I've been told. The Gnostics didn't offer certainty. They offered a challenge. To wake up, look deeper, and remember who you really are.